In this video, we're going to be looking at the causes of infectious disease, which is part of Module 7, right at the beginning. So when you look at Module 7, there's lots to cover, and we're going to be looking at this one, classifying different pathogens. We're also going to be looking at transmission, direct contact, indirect contact, and vectors. We will also look at some examples of plant diseases and animal diseases in agriculture, as well as looking at adaptations. So let's start off by classifying some pathogens. So an infectious disease is a disease that's caused by an organism or an infective agent, and these causative agents are known as pathogens. And a pathogen is any organism or infective agent that lives in or on another living organism causing disease. So pathogens are always linked to disease. So pathogens must cause a disease. And when you look here, this is one way of classifying pathogens. So all disease-causing entities are here, and they can be split into either being microscopic, too small to see, or macroscopic, visible with the naked eye. So if we follow down the macroscopic route, if the thing you can see with your eye lives outside the body, it is known as an ectoparasite. So that might be something like a head louse or a tick. If it lives inside the body, so it might be some kind of worm or like a tapeworm, or a nematode on a potato causing rot in the potato, then it's an endoparasite. It lives inside the body. So if we go back to our pathogen and we can't see it, it could be non-cellular or cellular. A non-cellular could be that it's just made of protein. If it's just made of protein, it's a prion. And if it's got a protein coat around it and some kind of nucleic acid inside it, it's a virus. If it actually has cellular components, so like cell membranes, cytoplasm, if it has no nucleus, it's prokaryotic, so it's a bacteria. If it has a nucleus, it might be a fungi, if it's got a fungal cell wall, or it might be a protozoan if it doesn't have a cell wall, or perhaps it might be a green protozoan. Protozoans are hard to classify. So remember back to Module 2 for all different classifications of cells. So let's have a look at the different types there. Prion. Prions are just misfolded proteins, and there are lots of prion diseases out there. They are not particularly well understood. They definitely do not contain any genetic material, but they do seem to be passed on from organism to organism, possibly through food. So for example, when BSE, mad cow disease, bovine spongiform encephalopathy, was prevalent in the UK, people weren't allowed to eat the meat. They thought it might lead to Creutzfeldt-Jakob's disease, which is a prion disease of the brain. So it's unclear really the mechanism of these, but there seems to be some self-catalytic misfolding that takes place and results in a disease. Some examples. Kuru. This is a disease that was first described in the highlands of Papua New Guinea. So you get kind of a disease of the nervous system, get shaking and trembling and grimacing, and it seems to be transmitted through the ceremonial eating of infected brain tissue. Creutzfeldt-Jakob's disease, CJD, that is a disease that affects people and was possibly linked to BSE, so muscular discoordination, personality changes, dementia, jerky muscles, blindness, inability to move or speak, so eating beef products infected with the prion disease BSE was the cause. So because it can be passed on, seems to be catalytic in that way, then it is an infectious agent. Viruses are not cellular pathogens. So we know quite a lot about viruses. They have nucleic acid in the center of them. So it might be DNA, it might be RNA. They have protein coats around the outside, and they cannot reproduce without a host cell. So they take over a host cell, use all the cellular machinery to make their proteins and reproduce their nucleic acid, and then they burst out of the cell and form the new viruses. So there are lots of different types of virus. They range in different sizes. You can have viruses that affect bacteria, called phages, that cause disease in bacteria. You can have viruses that affect plants, like tobacco mosaic virus. So here's a phage. Tobacco mosaic virus affects a plant. It causes a mosaic pattern on the leaves of tobacco plants and other related plants. And obviously, if you mess up the leaf, you're going to mess up photosynthesis. Mumps, that's a virus that people get. You've probably been vaccinated for it in an MMR vaccine. Common cold, rhinovirus, but lots of other ones too, like coronavirus, HIV. There are lots of viruses around. Bacteria. Bacteria are single-celled, prokaryotic. They are cellular, they have cell membranes, they have cytoplasm, they have DNA in a large circular chromosome, and they have little pieces of extra DNA that float around called plasmids. They don't have any organelles, they're really quite small, but because they can reproduce really quickly, like every 20 minutes, once you get a bacterial infection, it can spread really quickly. The kind of diseases that you can get caused by bacteria: typhoid, cholera, salmonella food poisoning. You can also get Staphylococcus aureus. Normally lives on your skin, but if it gets into your blood, it can cause septicemia. You could get strep throat. That's a streptococcus infection. So there are lots of different bacterial diseases that you can get. Plants also get bacterial diseases. It causes things like canker, which you may not have heard of, but when tomatoes rot on the vine, that can be caused by bacteria. And that's obviously going to have a lot of bad effects for farmers. Protozoans, so these are single-celled eukaryotic organisms. They have a nucleus now. We're in the kingdoms of nucleus containing organisms. So these are eukaryotes. Some of them can swim using a flagella. Some of them use little cilia on their surface to swim around. Some of them use little pseudopods like flowing cytoplasmic feet. But you can get, there's lots of them around. You can get them in pond water, seawater. They tend to be in water, but they don't have to be. So you can get, there's a protozoan that causes malaria. That can't get into us unless it's actually injected into us by a mosquito. But you can also pick up things like an amoeba causes amoebic dysentery. So dysentery is a type of really nasty diarrhea. Trypanosoma causes sleeping sickness. And then paramecium can cause, plasmodium causes malaria as well. So lots of protozoan diseases can make us quite sick. The next one, fungi. Fungi are also eukaryotic organisms. They have a nucleus, they have a fungal cell wall. There are lots of fungal diseases. The one pictured here is athlete's foot. You can also get ringworm. You can get thrush, which is a single-celled fungal cell that can grow in your mouth or in your in and around your genitalia if it's moist and not very clean. You can get a lot of fungal problems with plants as well. So rust, myrtle rust, for example, which affects eucalypts and tea tree plantations. You can get fungal dieback, which affects hardwood forests. So you lose lots and lots of trees that have been growing for a long time and suddenly they all die off. So fungal diseases are particularly problematic in agriculture. So our last category of pathogen are parasites, and our main two types of parasites are parasites that live inside us or parasites that live outside us. So on the outside of us we can have things like head lice and mites and ticks, and inside us we can have things like worms. So this poor chap's got a worm that's blocking his lymph nodes, so the lymph can't drain away up his leg, so he's ended up with what's called elephantiasis, which is a very large, overly swollen leg, and that's because worms are blocking the lymph drainage tubes. You can also get lots of parasitic diseases on plants, so you could get things that live on the outside of plants, like these black fly or aphids, but also things that live inside the tissue. So they've got a little miner here, a leaf mining worm that's going through the citrus leaf, and again, destroying its ability to photosynthesize efficiently. And the aphids, these little black fly, they're actually sucking on the phloem and removing some of the photosynthetic tissue that's being produced. All of which can also open up infection from any of the other pathogens we talked about. Now you've broken open the cell wall, other things can get in too.